after the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelenskyy. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
New normal era.
Rick, briefly expand on that, because I know you spent a lot of time in Europe and you know this. Are some of these countries in the midst of the perfect storm to continue pushing to the right? What do you see?
Look, the immigration issue is one that the far right has carefully exploited in Europe, and I will tell you, the flood of immigration into Europe in the post Middle East moment has led to opportunities for the far right they would not have had under other circumstances. It is an issue that works very effectively with working class voters, just as it does in the U.S. I think that we're in a very dangerous moment, and if you were to ask me how it ends, unfortunately, I think it ends in blood and terror. I don't mean to be so down about it, but this is not a great situation that we're in right now.
Quickly, Rick, what do you mean by that, blood and terror?
I think we're at a point right now where Donald Trump is going to sell Ukraine down the river to Putin, and it's not going to stop. He'll go into Poland. He'll go into the Baltics. He'll go into Germany. This is a green light for terror and horror in Europe that we haven't seen since World War II. Abandoning NATO, which was the glue that held Europe together for decades and provided global security for decades, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth took it this weekend. They tore it up and spat on it on the floor in front of their supposed allies, all to please Vladimir Putin back in Moscow. This is going to end, and it will not end well.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we have to continue our coverage of the current fallout in Europe over Vice President J.D. Vance pulling up to the Munich Security Conference to talk about Ukraine and Russia and potentially bringing peace to that conflict, but also at the same time dropping a truth bomb on European leadership about the decline in Western values, okay? And apparently they're so butthurt that they're quite literally crying about what J.D. Vance said, okay? Mainly that, hey, you guys aren't living up to the values that we once fought for, okay? We fought World War I, World War II together to promote Western values of freedom, free speech, democracy. I'm talking about actual democracy, not today's definition of democracy, which just basically means the globalist agenda. But outside of that, J.D. Vance is saying, listen, we aren't living up to that anymore, okay? And if we're going to fight on your behalf, if we're going to be in a military alliance, if we're going to subsidize and support you, at the very least, you guys can live up to the values that we're all supposed to believe in. Now, again, apparently they aren't taking that too well, okay? They are boohoo, whining, crying, breaking down in tears over J.D. Vance telling them the truth, okay? And we know it's the truth because even 60 Minutes ran a segment about the censorship in Germany. And again, free speech is damn near non-existent. Take a look.
It's illegal to display Nazi symbolism, a swastika, or deny the Holocaust. That's clear. Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher.
Yeah.
If you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
that sticks around forever.
Yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
The punishment for breaking hate speech laws can include jail time for repeat offenders. But in most cases, a judge levies a stiff fine and sometimes keeps their devices.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked. It's a kind of punishment if you lose your smartphone. It's even worse than the fine you have to pay.
Because your whole life is typically on your phone now.
Yeah, so apparently in Germany, it can be a crime to post a meme that the government doesn't like, right? Like this is the type of authoritarianism that we're talking about, okay? But, you know, hey, according to liberal news outlets in the United States of America, no, this is necessary because free speech is what led to the Holocaust.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Yeah. Marco Rubio did an amazing job doing that interview, right? I mean, I think that Margaret Brennan should have been fired for claiming that free speech is what led to the Holocaust, right? I mean, the level of propaganda in this country, it just never ceases to amaze me. So with that being said, we have to talk about another reason why the leaders in Europe are upset. Well, they're upset because President Trump is working to bring an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia, right? Which apparently is something that they don't like.
What would you say to Donald Trump, Minister Sikorski? we have more chairs. We have more chairs.
I would tell him three things. Number one, Joe Biden was your successor and predecessor, but he planted the flag of the United States in downtown Kiev and declared on behalf of the United States that the US will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes until Ukraine secures its independence. Therefore, the credibility of the United States depends on how this war ends. Not just the Trump administration, the United States itself. I would secondly tell him that if you allow Putin to vassalize Ukraine, that will send a message to China that you can recover what you regard as a renegade province. And that would have direct consequences for US grand strategy, for the US system of alliances, and possibly for the future of Taiwan. And I would thirdly tell him that we Europeans control the Nobel Peace Prize. If you want to earn it, the peace has to be fair.
Very clear.
Yo, this is hilarious. Okay, the Europeans are essentially threatening the president by saying, listen, we're not going to give you the Nobel Peace Prize if you achieve peace between Ukraine and Russia, right? Like, how does that make sense? Okay, we're not going to give it to you if you decide to bring peace, right? I thought the whole point of the award was about peace, right? I mean, President Trump is trying to bring peace, but apparently, that's a bad thing, according to the Europeans, unless they get peace the way that they want it, right? Which is to have Ukraine join NATO, okay? Which, I just don't think is ever going to be acceptable for Russia, but this is what they want, right? They want a solution that's going to be unacceptable. And they don't have the military spending or military power to really take on Russia by themselves. And this is why they're so hurt by the United States choosing to say, you know what, Ukraine, you either got to take it or leave it with the current situation. Okay, you lost some territory, right? I mean, you're going to lose this battle in the long term without us anyways. So at this point, you might as well just try to make peace, okay, be neutral, and, just go from there, right? It is what it is, okay? But we can no longer continue to support this. Now, Vladimir Zelenskyy does not like this, right? He does not like this at all, okay? And this is what he told the liberal news outlets here in the United States of America on the Sunday show.
So I will never accept any decisions between the United States and Russia about Ukraine. Never. And our people, never. And our adults and children and everybody. It can't be so. This is the war in Ukraine against us, and it's our human losses.
Can Ukraine survive without U.S. military support?
Probably it will be very, very, very difficult. And of course, in all the difficult situations, you have a chance, but we will have low chance to survive without support of the United States.
Yeah, so you see, now you heard that. Now, Zelenskyy says that, hey, he will never, ever, ever accept a peace agreement without Ukraine being a part of negotiations. Now, hey, if that's what, he wants to do, then fine, right? I mean, he can fight Russia for their land, to get their land back, just without our support and aid, right? I mean, he's more than welcome to do that. If he wants to continue the war, if he doesn't like the agreement, then, he's free to continue to fight Russia. And listen, more power to him. More power to him. He has my thoughts and prayers, okay? Thoughts and prayers with Ukraine, trying to fight Russia without the help of the United States of America, okay? But they're free to do that. Listen, hey, it is what it is, right? But what I do know is that the American people don't want to support this anymore, okay? So you can't be upset that the President of the United States is saying, listen, it seems as if our European allies, including Ukraine, they aren't really interested in coming to a realistic peace agreement. So we're going to essentially try to negotiate peace. If Ukraine doesn't like it, then, it is what it is. Again, they can fight the war themselves, right? If they really want the land back that badly. So I'm just saying that's just what it is. And that seems to be the direction that we're headed in. Okay, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, seems to be leading the negotiations. And Vladimir Zelenskyy, he can't sit at the big boys table. So, again, he's upset that he doesn't have a seat at the table. So, that being said, again, CNN is shocked. They're shocked by the fact that the public, the actual people, don't support this war as much as they used to. As in, they think that the U.S. is doing too much to support Ukraine.
Holy Toledo. Look at this trend line here. U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. Back when the war began, back in February of 2022, it was just 7%. Up like a rocket ship. My goodness. Up now in February of 2025 to 41%. And the clear majority of Republicans, and of course Republicans are in charge of the U.S. government now, 62% of Republicans say that the U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. What a difference from just 3 years ago. I can remember, John, all those backyards in the United States with those Ukrainian flags. Far fewer of them today, as Americans' opinions on Ukraine have changed dramatically.
What about opinions of the Ukrainian president?
Right. Obviously, if you would expect changes amongst the public on feelings towards Ukraine, feelings towards Zelenskyy have changed also dramatically. Look at this. Confident Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Back in 2022, it was the clear majority, 72% through the floor. Through the floor by 2024, just 48% of Americans say that they're confident that Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. And GOP confidence has also plummeted dramatically. Now the clear majority of Republicans are not confident that Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Really a real trend line, ones you rarely see in the American public when it comes to Ukraine and Zelenskyy. Confidence in both going down through.
Yeah, well, that just shows you how ineffective the propaganda is from the media, right? The fact is, people don't listen to the media anymore, right? Because, I mean, let's be real. Again, these numbers for Zelenskyy were great in regards to how the American public felt about Ukraine back when the war first started. Now, fast forward 2 to 3 years, and the opinions have changed. Well, that's because, again, the American people are now becoming more immune to the propaganda from the liberal media, right? And also the censorship on top of that, because they censored people who didn't have the right opinions on this conflict when it first broke out And again, despite all that, the American people are kind of seeing this for what it is. At this point, it is best for Ukraine to be neutral, okay? And that's not necessarily pro-Russia. That's just pro-America, right? It's pro-America for Ukraine to be neutral so that we're not dragged into some broader war, some broader conflict by having Ukraine become a part of NATO, which, again, I don't think would ever be acceptable to Russia. And at this point, we just got to accept it for what it is, right? Unless we want to continue to escalate, okay, which some of these individuals do. They want to continue to escalate with Russia, a country that has nukes. And I just don't think that conflict with Russia is really worth it, right? I don't think it is something that the American people can stomach at this point, right? On top of that, we spent hundreds of billions of dollars on the war in Ukraine. At some point, enough is enough, right? They fought hard. And, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is what it is in regards to the current outcome. But the American people are sick and tired of sending tax dollars over there when, this isn't really our thing, right? I mean, it's Europe's thing, okay? They should be concerned about it, right? I understand why they're upset. But for us personally, over here on the other side of the world, yeah, we have other things we got to worry about, right? Like our own border, the southern border.
Look, some allies of President Trump have targeted Zelenskyy with harsh criticism over the last few years, and it could be that that's having some impact here.
Absolutely. The Republican establishment, the Republican electorate has moved as the Republican establishment and Republican leaders have moved on.
All right, let's talk about the idea of a peace deal. And again, the way you ask this matters, but go ahead.
The way you ask it is important, so we can talk about this a little bit. So the poll question essentially is, do you support a Russia-Ukraine negotiated peace deal? The vast majority of Americans, this is what they want. 78% say that they support this idea versus just 16% oppose. Of course, as we were talking about, does this question actually get at what's going on right now? I think you would say that it probably does not necessarily get what's going on right now.
No, the question asked, do you support a Russia-Ukraine negotiated peace deal? Ukraine's not there at the negotiations in Saudi Arabia this week, so the people were not asked this. And I do think, in general, if you ask anyone in any poll, do you support peace, peace tends to rate pretty highly.
Peace tends to win. You rarely get 78% of the country agreeing on anything. They do agree on the idea of a negotiated peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Whether the majority would agree on a Russia peace deal with Ukraine where Ukraine has nothing to do with it, that might be a different question.
Hard to know. Harriet, and thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Bad news for Zelenskyy, okay? I mean, again, the American people say we don't want to support this anymore, right? We've sent too much of our tax dollars over there. It's time to bring this conflict to an end. Europe doesn't want to do that unless they can get everything they want, which is not going to happen, okay? Russia is not going to accept Ukraine becoming part of NATO. Ukraine is probably not going to get those territories back, but who knows? Again, if they want to fight for it, right, then cool, right? If the Europeans want to allow Ukraine to join NATO and then they go fight Russia, right, with their armies and use their money to go do it, then, that's cool too. But if it involves the United States having to fight on behalf of Ukraine, I'm not sure if the American people are going to get on board with that. We're not going to get on board with that. Again, which is why we're trying to negotiate a peace agreement that is probably the most likely to actually bring an end to this conflict. So, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.